Frank Miller and Lynn Barley. Okay. This is our history too, as well, but in art form. Of course, I picked this book up a couple weeks ago. Haven't really been able to do a video on it, but you know, I would recommend this book for quote unquote Black history. You know, you really can't quantify our history into 1 month, but you know, apparently our contributions to society are very limited, you know, based on their academia and scholars. Well, when you read some of their books, you know, they'll put, oh, the original people were dark skinned, etc. But on page 300 or 400, you actually have to look and search for that type of information and stuff. But I've made videos on this book before, but obviously Frank Miller knows the true identity of the Spartans or the Lacedaemonians. You can see this right here with the Corinthian hat and the braids coming out the brother's helmet. Those are not Caucasian people. People of color, Aboriginal or indigenous people. Okay, same thing right here. Another brother got the braids or locks. Same thing right here. Okay. From dear Laconia, from Sacred Spartan. Okay. This will be a quick video. You see the braids or the twists coming from his brother's hair. Same thing right here. Okay. Let me show you another book. So right here we have the book Nature Knows No Color Line by J. Rogers. Negroes from Ancient Greece. As we can see right here, we notice the comb coils or the twist, right? Same thing right here. And Frank Miller is not an Afrocentric or Pan-African, you know, whatnot. But, you know, when you're an artist or when you do specific type of work, you want, you know, you want accurate depictions of the people of those times. But, you know, okay. And it reads, Yashar'el or Strapo. It says, the black race, more ancient than the white, was dominant upon the earth and held the scepter of science and power. So we can talk about the ancient Greeks or philosophy, Aristotle, Pluto. Those were so-called black people, okay? And the Greeks, people now associate with blonde hair and blue eyes. No, it's not real history. In the States, the white race, he says, was still weak, savage, and without laws, without cultivation of any sort, destitute memories, and too devoid of understanding, even to conceive hope. He adds, the black race then existed in all the pomps of social state. Okay. So this notion of democracy was invented by Caucasians. No, they took that from obviously people of color because our ancestors are the ones that created civilizations, you know. And of course, everything got whitewashed. You had Negroes in Rome. The early American colonists had laws against the mating of whites and blacks. The ancients, none. They didn't care about that. Okay. Here we go. Aristotle evidently favored this belief. He said in Sicily, a woman who committed adultery with an Ethiopian brought forth a daughter that was white, but his daughter had a son that was black. The dark skin here is thrown back to the grandfather. right here. The case from Greece involved adultery. As was said, the scientists of that time explained such births on atavism. That is a throwback that one of the parents had a Negro ancestor more or less distant. See right here, braids. This should have been played by a, tawny brother or the dark skin, so-called Negro. Same thing. Look at the hairstyles. If you can't tell this right here, this Persian brother. Yeah, man. But they just want us to talk about slavery for Black History Month. Or Martin Luther King, right? No offense to him. Okay. This is blasphemous. Or this is blasphemy. This is madness. Look at the hair. Okay. And we're going to look at my book. What do we have right here? Okay. See that? Ancient Persian. See the hoop earring, woolly beard, the bow. Okay. Very similar, right? When Spartan burns, you will bathe in gold. Flesh oracles will be delivered to you daily from every corner of the empire. Look at that nose ring and so forth. The woolly coarse beard. So we know the Spartans worship Apollo. So it states, we have found a black complexion or something relating to it whenever we have approached the origin of nations. Amata, the goddess of Multimama, the founders of the oracles, the Memnon of first idols, were always black. Venus, Jupiter, Apollo, Showtime, right? Bacchus. That's why a lot of brothers dress up in drag because, this was a androgynous, deity, especially when you think about arts and theaters and so forth. Hercules, Astaroth, Adonis, Horus, Apis, Osiris, and Ammon. In short, all the deities were black. They remain as they were first in very ancient times. Godfrey Higgins, so-called white man. Okay. So, I've shown this before, the video. Corinthian hat. Okay. Look like the brother from that group. The song was called Solid as a Rock. They remind me of Ashford and Samson, as we can see right here. Okay. Don't they look like their brother? All right, here we got the Persians. Okay. As I stated, the Persians. Okay. So-called Negroid phenotype or whatnot. Okay. We have the 3rd edition, the new Oxford Annotated Bible, New Revised Standard Version with the Apocrypha. Apocrypha means what? Hidden. Okay. Now we're at First Maccabees. Okay. Because the Lacedaemonians were what? They were Spartans. This is a copy of the letter that they sent to Onus, King Arius of the Spartans, to the high priest Onus. Greetings. It has been found in writing concerning the Spartans and the Jews that they are brothers and are of the family of Abraham. So now we're in the book of Romans, chapter 9, verse 1, and it states, I say the truth in Christ, or the Hamashiach, I lie not, my conscience also bearing me witness in the Holy Spirit, that I have great heaviness and continual sorrow in my heart. For I could wish that myself were accursed from Hamashiach, for my brethren and my kinsmen, keyword kinsmen, according to the flesh. Verse 4, who are Israelites, I repeat, who are Israelites, to whom pertaineth the adoption and the glory and the covenants, plural, and the giving of the law and the service of the Most High and the promises. So now we're in the book of James, chapter 1. Now James was the brother of the Hamashiach, or Yahushai, and it states, James, a servant of the Most High and of the Lord, Yahushai, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greetings. So now we're at the etymology of the word Gentile, and it states the Latin adjective also meant of or belonging to the same nation. Keyword, same nation, meaning what? The 12 tribes. Hence, as a noun, Gentiles, plural, might mean men of family, persons belonging to the same family, meaning what? The 12 tribes that are scattered abroad. As James stated in James 1:1, fellow countrymen, kinsmen, keyword, kinsmen, as it's stated in Romans 9:3. For I could wish that myself were accursed from the Hamashiach for my brethren, my kinsmen, keyword, kinsmen, according to the flesh. So they were Gentile or Israelite foreigners. Notice they use Spartans, right? Now when we go to the 1611 King James edition, it says what? Arius, king of the Lacedaemonians, meaning what? The Spartans or Sparta, to Onus, the high priest, greeting. It is found in writing that the Lacedaemonians are Jews. There was no letter J back then. Are brethren, and that they are the stock of Abraham. Okay? The Bible gives you the biblical seed line, and the other nations use, where you're from or what land you're born in and so forth. But that ties into the older video I made and so forth. But notice that Oxford, they know what they're talking about somewhat. But, Spartans were so-called black or people of color. It's based on Frank Miller's comics and so forth. The braids, the locks, and so forth. So right here, we're back at chapter 12. At the bottom it states, alliances with the Romans and Spartans. Verse 5, this is a copy of the letter that Jonathan wrote to the Spartans, because what? The Spartans are Israelites. The high priest Jonathan, the senate of the nation, the priests, and the rest of the Jewish people. Don't get fooled by the Jewish. It's talking about so-called black people, a Negroid people, not the people of today. To their brothers, the Spartans, greetings. And to clarify that, we're at the picture history of Jewish civilization, because they said the Jewish people, right? We're not talking about the modern people who call themselves Jewish or the converts. Talk about these people right here. Woolly, kinky hair, afros. Okay. Talking about these people. The bonnet, the hoop earrings, and so forth. But I just have to clarify that, because some people get thrown off by certain words or triggered. Now we're going to go into the back of the book, the map. Okay. Right here. There's Macedonia, Alexander the Macedon, Caucasian, the he goat. Right here we have Corinth. Right here, Sparta, Lacedaemon. Okay. So they're telling you, right? As we can see right here in this illustration, we have a Spartan soldier. Okay. Look at the Corinth helmet. And notice the braids or locks, but more specifically braids, coming from the helmet, just like in the movie or in the comic book 300, right? I do believe the Spartans were a mixture of Judites, Danites, and the Philistines. But we're going to get more specific or look more into that in a minute. Now we're in the book of Numbers, chapter 6, verse 5, and it states, "All the days of the vow of his separation, there shall no razor come upon his head until the days be fulfilled, and in which he separated himself unto the Lord Yahweh, he shall be holy, and shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow." And of course, this is the Nazarite vow. Samson, who was a Danite from the tribe of Dan, was a Nazarite. So was Samuel the prophet and John the Baptist. So now we're at the Strong's H4253 outline of biblical usage. Number 1, braid, lock, plait of hair. Strong's definition, a ringlet of hair as gliding over each other, a lock. It also states, noun feminine, plait of hair, so called from interweaving, passing through each other of the strands. So right here we have a few examples of man plaits, or what they call box braids today. Very popular hairstyle among so-called black or quote-unquote African Americans. So now we're at the etymology of the word plait, verb, and it states, to fold something, gather into pleats, double and narrow strips, also to braid or weave something from plait. It also states plait, noun, interlace strands of hair, to lay, fold, twist, like 2-strand twist, or, braids with the 3-strand twist and so forth. So now we're going to be looking at this book. It's called The Unknown Catacomb, a unique discovery of early Christian art. Now we know that the biblical Samson was an ancient Israelite, meaning what? He was of a Negroid phenotype. But oftentimes you see a lot of the Renaissance or early 1800 paintings or depictions of the biblical characters as Caucasians. And of course, this was first done historically during Alexander the Macedon or the Great. And when you read first Maccabees 3 and 48, they opened up the book of the law, and the heathen sought to paint the likeness of themselves. Right here we have a picture, figure 114, Samson slaying the lion. As we can see, Samson is a so-called black or Negroid man, an ancient Israelite, right? So right here we have an illustration or picture of Hercules, which he has the lion skin over his left shoulder, and in his right hand he has the club. But notice the Negroid features of Hercules. So right here we have the movie Hercules starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I do believe this came out in 2014, but Hollywood knows a lot about real history, and that being that Hercules is actually Samson. Okay, so the Spartans, they believed that they came from the genealogy of Hercules, aka Samson, which was a Danite or from the tribe of Dan. Because remember, the Spartans are a mixture of Judites, Danites, and the Philistines. And it states, first millennium Sparta was particular in that it was ruled simultaneously by 2 hereditary kings, both proudly traced their genealogy from Hercules, meaning what? Samson. Perhaps certain writing genealogy that Spartan king Arius I highlighted was his genealogical link to the Israelites through a descendant from this individual. And that individual was what? Samson, which was a Danite from the tribe of Dan. So now we're in the book of Genesis chapter 10, verse 6, and it states, and the sons of Ham, Cush, and Mitzrayim, which is what? Kemet or Egypt, and Put, and Canaan. Now we're going to skip to verse 14. And Pathrum and Cashlum, out of whom came the Philistine and the Captorim. So now we're back at the Blue Letter Bible Concordance, and it states, outline of biblical usage, Cashlum equals fortified, a people or tribe descended from Mitzrayim, Egypt, progenitors of the Philistines and Captorim. Now, the real scholars know that these parts of southern Europe were inhabited by so-called black people, whether it was the Minoans, the Dorans, and so forth. Okay, but it states the Philistines are referred to as the descendants of the Cashlaim in Genesis 10 and 14 and Exodus 13 and 17. Known as a seafaring nation, the Philistines were a non-Semitic people who left Crete and arrived in Canaan at the beginning of the 12th century BCE. The Spartans being Israelites, and we must remember that the New Testament just means covenant, okay? So, when you see this, Israelite/Gentile foreigners, that's talking about the 12 tribes or 10, whatever term you want to use, that are scattered abroad. From Genesis to Revelation, it's talking about the nation of Israel, the 12 tribes. It's not talking about the other heathenistic or other nations, etc. Okay? The Bible is a chronicling, a diary between the Most High and his people. Okay? So we have to understand the context. So we start at Genesis chapter 35, 11 through 12. A nation and a company of nations shall be of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins. The land which I gave Abraham and Isaac to thee, I will give it, and to thee seed, meaning what? Progeny. So the promised seed, the Most High makes to Jacob/Israel, that nations and kings will come from his offspring. Okay? So Genesis chapter 35 is not talking about the other non-Israelite or non-Jacob tribes. Okay? So Genesis 35 is talking about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's not talking about the other nations. Okay? More specifically, it's talking about Jacob and his progeny. Okay? So this notion that the church replaced the Israelites, the so-called blacks or people in general, no, the church has not replaced anything. The church, in retrospective, is the church of Ha-Satan. The churches that most millions of people gather and follow. Now we're at Jeremiah chapter 3 and 20. Metaphorically, Israel equals the wife, okay, the bride, and the Most High is the husband. So for the disobedience, Israel/Judah, it was a whore, right? So the Most High divorced his people, doing what? Kicking them out of the land. Now we're in the book of Isaiah chapter 1 verse 4, and it states, a sinful nation, meaning what? Israel, a people laden with iniquity, a seed of evildoers, and children that are corrupters. They have forsaken Yahweh. They have provoked the Holy One of Israel into anger, and they are gone away backward. Scatter them abroad. Now we're at Leviticus chapter 26, verse 33. I will scatter you among the heathen, meaning what? The Most High is going to scatter our people, our phenotypes, among the various different nations, the Hamitic, the Japhites, etc. Deuteronomy 28 and 37. Thou shalt become a proverb and a byword, astonishment among all nations. Proverb meaning what? Object of scorn. We're called the N-word, or we're called black or so-called black or African Americans. That's a corporate destination. Black does not denote to any historical history, language, culture, region, etc. It's a straw man's term. So now we're at byword. Theatrical, meaning what? Bad sense. Okay? The satire that they use in certain movies and so forth, making fun of the so-called blacks of the captivity because they know our history better than we know ourselves. Now, when you go to Acts chapter 13 and 1, it states, prophets and teachers, Barnabas and Simeon, called what? The N-word. Okay? So now we're at Deuteronomy chapter 28 and 64. You will serve other gods, wood and stone, scattered thee among all people. So the Most High scattered his people among all the various nations, okay? Now we're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 25. Shall be removed into all kingdoms of the earth. We shall be removed into all kingdoms of the earth. Now we're at Deuteronomy 28 and 64. Serve other gods, wood and stone, scattered thee among all people. So the common theme is the Most High is scattering his people, and they shall serve other deities, other gods, etc. Okay, wood and stone, as we seen here in the Americas and many other places in South America and different places around the world. People are worshiping idols of wood and stone. More specifically, the Catholic Church, which is nothing but the Babylonian Kemetic mystery religion. That's why Paul stated that this was the mystery of iniquity, meaning what? Wicked mimics righteousness, okay? So now I read James 1 and 1. To the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greetings, okay? This is what James is stating in the first verse. Now we're at John 10 and 16. And other sheep, this is Yashar'el or Jesus speaking, and other sheep I have which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, meaning what? The word, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd, i.e. the lost tribes of Israel, okay?
Jesus hang alongside. Forget it. The only Jesus I know is him, and the one thing he don't need is a partner. Mama, how do we know Jesus wasn't black? He could have been from the lost tribe of Israel. They were supposed to be black. I bet they were. If ever people were lost, we're it.
Now, we all seen this clip, plenty of times in certain channels or whatnot. But it resonates, or it should resonate, because they tell you the truth in satire, in different shows, movies, etc. So they know who the children of Israel are, i.e. the lost tribes, not really lost, but they know who they represent, the so-called blacks or the Negroes, okay? So even when you watch the movie, The Book of Clarence, okay, they portray the Negro as the Hebrew, which he rightfully is.
As long as I can remember. When I was a baby, I don't know what I saw first. My mama, my papa, or this Jesus. Now, he's the one I know and love. So let's close the subject.
So now when you're in the knowledge, or what they call the truth, this is common knowledge. But, a lot of times your siblings, your aunt, your uncle, your mother, your father can't correlate or put one and one together. Because black is a straw man's term, like I've said plenty of times in older videos, but they can never put one and one together. And when you watch the movie The Book of Clarence, they use satire, okay? The Hebrews in that time period of Judea in 33 AD, they knew who Yahweh was. But, it's funny in the film that this old dirty Caucasian or white man, they clean him up, and he is the counterpart of Yahweh, who the world calls Jesus, but in a Caucasian form. And he's going around and everyone's in awe and ooh over him. And like she said, this is all that she knows. So like they say, an image is worth 1,000 words, right? And like most people do not read or understand the context of the scriptures. A book about law, history, and prophecy of the Hebrewic or 12 tribes of Israel, their story of their journey with the Most High, or the Most High's journey with them. It's definitely amnesia and frustrating at times when you try to enlighten or awake your people.
Jesus was black, the Bible would have said so. But it does say so. What are you talking about? I read about it. It's in Revelation chapter 1, verse 14. I read about it in Muhammad Speak.
And when you come to the revelation, or the Most High gives you the Holy Spirit, meaning what? The law, statutes, and commandments, to understand these concepts, or what the brothers out on the streets, corners are teaching and preaching, it makes sense. But, when you're an adult and you really don't adhere or listen to your children, and you brush off their ideas or opinions, or even if they know something that you're not aware of, what is that?
Says, His hair is like wool, and his eyes are like flame of fire. Well, Lord have mercy. It sure do say that, don't it? And see, Mom, look at her hair, like wool, ain't it? And look at them eyes, red like fire.
Now, the irony or the funny thing about Doctor Strange is he plays the white or Caucasian Jesus Christ in the film, in mockery or satire. Because we all know when we read biblical archaeological finds that the real Hamashiach or Yahushua was not a so-called pale or white man, especially in those regions. And it reads, Cumberbatch's character in the Book of Clarence is meant to explain why white Jesus has become the standard in modern Christianity, comically contributing to the movie's theme of black oppression. Now I read Acts chapter 2, 5 through 11. The book of Acts gives insight to some of the areas we scattered, such as Parthia, Media, Elam, Mesopotamia, which is what? Babylon, Cappadocia, Pontus, Asia, and so forth. So we were scattered abroad. And it states that in the New Testament, okay, from a historical point of view. So our people sought to be like Gentiles, i.e. the other nations, and through disobedience, we became Gentiles. So there's that word assimilation, meaning what? A process of becoming similar to others by taking in, using their customs and culture. That goes right back up to Deuteronomy 28 and 64. Serve other gods of wood and stone, okay? So once you've been captured or you assimilate into other cultures, you're going to take on, like the old saying, you are who you hang around with, right? So now we're in the first book of the Maccabees, okay? We'll start at verse 11. In those days went out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are around about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. Okay. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen. There you go. Okay, whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen, meaning what? The Gentiles, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, meaning what? Gentiles, and were sold to do mischief. So now we're at Acts chapter 29. I read this in some old videos. Paul traveled to ancient Britain. Okay, this is in the Sefer Bible. Acts 29 and 2. He heard in Phoenicia that certain of the children of Israel about the time of the Assyrian captivity had escaped by sea to the isles afar off, meaning what? United Kingdom, Scotland, England, and Ireland. Okay. King James united those three lands in 1603. Okay. So-called black people. Okay. Believe it or not. Okay. Reading on. As spoken by the prophet Esdras and called by the Romans, Britain. Substantiate that claim, of course, this book, Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 1 by David McRitchie. I use this book plenty of times in older videos. On page 173. In the States, Scotland was overrun in one district by Moors of the 15th century. But 5 centuries earlier, the kings of Alpin were Moors, and one of the most celebrated of these, Kenneth, or the N-word, some people say Niger, but the phonetic sounding is Niger, or Dub, ruled over certain districts known as the 3 black divisions. And what are those 3 black divisions? England, Northern Ireland, and number 3, Scotland / the Wales. How long before and after that the ascendancy remained with his swarthy nation? Swarthy means dark skin. And what were the probable fluctuations of color throughout the island? It is impossible to ascertain and premature to discuss, but at any rate, The Moorish races, Nec Falso, Nomen, Pictos, were among the chief opponents of the Romans when they marched through Britain 1800 years ago. Okay, so, and there's plenty of other evidence in this book when you read it or get a chance to. They know who the original inhabitants of, Britain, the British Isles, and so forth. Okay, so the notion that Japheth is a white man, no. The descendants of Japheth were people of color, dark skin, Javan, the Ionians, the original ancient Greeks, and so forth.
Acts 29:13. The Druids came to Paul privately and showed by their rites and ceremonies they were descended from the Jews or Judeans or Israelites which escaped from bondage in the land of Egypt or Kemet. So we should see a common theme that certain sects or certain Shemitic, groups that, scattered abroad are claiming to be descendants of the ancient Israelites, that being the Druids. And then in Acts chapter 2, 5 through 11, these parts of the Mesopotamian area and so forth. Okay. So now we're in the book of 1 Maccabees chapter 12, verse 21. And it states, "It is found in writing that the Lacedaemonians and Jews or Judeans are brethren, and that they are the stock of Abraham." So the precept, that verse, we can go all the way back up to Genesis chapter 35, where it states that a nation and a company of nations shall be of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins. The land which I gave Abraham, Isaac, to thee I will give it, and thy seed, meaning what? The progeny. Okay. So this is a precept all the way to 1 Maccabees 12 and 21. And you can add Acts, the 29th chapter, in there too, because, the Israelites captivity spreading all the way out to the British Isles and certain parts of Europe. Okay.
Now we're back in the book, The Works of Josephus, complete and unabridged, new updated edition. I found this years ago at Half Price Books. Okay. Now we're going to go see who the Lacedaemonians are, which are the Spartans, as it's stated in the movie 300. So right here, the Lacedaemonians. We're going to go to 13, 5, and 8. And it states, "Accordingly, as they returned, they came to Sparta." Okay, so the Lacedaemonians or the Spartans, like in the movie 300, and delivered the epistle, the letter which they had received of Jonathan to them, a copy of which here follows. Jonathan, the high priest of the Judean nation, and the senate and body of the people of the Jews, to the ephori and senate and body of the people of the Lacedaemonians, send greetings. If you be well, and both your public and private affairs be agreeable to your mind, and it is according to our wishes, we are well also. When in former times an epistle was brought to Onus, I may butcher some of these words, so bear with me, who was at that time your king, by Demoteles, concerning the kindred that was between us and you, a copy of which is here subjoined. We both joyfully received the epistle, meaning the letter, and were well pleased with Demoteles and Artis. Although we did not need such a demonstration, yet did not we think fit first to begin the claim of this relation to you, unless we should seem too early in taking to ourselves the glory which now given us by you. It is a long time since this relation of ours to you has been renewed, and when we upon holy and festival days offer sacrifices to God, we pray to him for our preservation and victory. So the Spartans prayed to Apollo. They prayed to the Greek gods. Okay. As to ourselves, although we have had many wars that have compassed around us by reason of our covetousness of our neighbors, Yet did not we determine to be troublesome neither to you or to others that were related to us? But since we have now overcome our enemies and have occasion to send Nemeus, the son of Antiochus, and Antipater, the son of Jason, who are both honorable men belonging to our Senate, to the Romans, we gave them this letter or epistle to you also, that they might renew that friendship which is between us. You will therefore do well yourselves to write to us and send us an account of what you stand in need from us, since we are in all things disposed to act according to your desires. So the Lacedaemonians, meaning what? The Spartans, the Negroid stock of Abraham, received the ambassadors kindly and made a decree for friendship and mutual assistance and sent it to them. So now we're back at page 345. I'm going to read the bottom part. This clause is otherwise rendered in the first book of Maccabees 12:9, for that we have the holy books of the scriptures in our hands to comfort us. The Hebrew original being lost, and we cannot certainly judge which was the truest version, and only the coherence favors Josephus. But if this were the Jews or Judeans, meaning that they were satisfied out of their Bible that the Jews are Judeans and the Lacedaemonians, meaning what? The Spartans were of kin, that part of their Bible is now lost. For we find no such assertion in our present copies. They did take the books out, right? That's why a lot of people can't find the correlation. But Frank Miller's comic, when you read the comic or the book, the Spartans have braids and they're people of color. But of course, in the movie, they had to portray them as Caucasian. Okay. But, most people say that's blackwashing, but history has been whitewashed. Okay. And they know it themselves. Antiquity of the Jews or Judeans. Artist, king of the Lacedaemonians, to Onus sendeth greetings. And it states, we have met with a certain writing whereby we have discovered that both the Jews or Judeans and the Lacedaemonians are of one stock and are derived from the kindred of Abraham. It is but just, therefore, that you, who are our brethren, should send to us about any of your concern as you please. We will also do the same thing and esteem your concerns as our own, and will look upon our concerns as in common with yours. And these were the contents of the epistle, meaning what? The letter which was sent from the king of the Lacedaemonians. But upon the death of Joseph, the people grew seditious on account of his sons. For whereas the elders made war against John Hyrcanus, who was the youngest of Joseph's sons, the multitude was divided, but the greater part joined with the elders in this war, as did Simon the high priest, by reason he was kin to them. However, Hyrcanus determined not to return to Jerusalem any more, but seated himself beyond Jordan, and was at perpetual war with the Arabians, and slew many of them, and took many of them captives. He also erected a strong castle, and built it entirely of white stone to the very roof, and had animals of a prodigious magnitude engraven upon it. He also drew around it a great deep canal of water. Reading on, whence it comes that these Lacedaemonians, which are the Spartans of Negroid stock, or from the stock of Abraham, declare themselves here to be of kin to the Jews or Judeans, is derived from the same ancestor, Abraham. I cannot tell, unless, as Grotius supposes, that they were derived from the Dories that came from the Pelagians. And it states the genetic distances are closer between Greeks and Ethiopian sub-Saharan groups than to any other Mediterranean group. The name Pelagian refers to populations that were either the ancestors of the Greeks or preceded the Greeks in Greece, a hold at all term for any ancient, primitive, and presumptively indigenous people in the Greek world. So anything that denotes the ancient means people of color. Elsewhere, the Pelagians
according to Herodotus, connotes anything typical of or surviving from the state of things in Greece before the coming of the Hellenes. In this sense, all Greece was once Pelagian. So now we're in the Blue Letter Bible, descendants of Noah, Genesis 10:1. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. They were all men of color. This notion that Shem was brown, Ham was black, and Japheth was a white man. No, that's the Caucasian trying to explain the biblical scriptures. Okay, they're Johnny come lately. Reading on, Genesis chapter 10, verse 2, the sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, keyword Javan, and Tubal, and Meshi, and Tyrus, and the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Rephaim, and Togarmah, and the sons of Javan, Elish, and Tarnish, Kittim, and Dunam. Right, these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families and their nations. So now we're at the Strong's Concordance for the word Javan or Yavant, and it states, outline of biblical usage. Number 1, Javan equals Ionia or Greece. Proper masculine noun, a son of Japheth and the grandson of Noah. It also states Greece, Ionia, Ionians. Location of descendants of Javan. Strong's definition states Javan, meaning what? Probably from the same as H3196, i.e. hot and active. Javan, the name of a son of Joktan, and of the race, meaning what? Seed line, Ionians, i.e. Greeks, descended from him with their territory, also of a place in Arabia. So now we're at the word Japhet or Japhet, and it states outline of biblical usage. Japheth equals open. The third son of Noah, whose descendants after the flood settled on the coastal lands of the Mediterranean, spreading north into Europe and parts of Asia. So this notion that the Caucasians are Europeans or they're Japheth based on their biblical understanding is a false narrative. Like I stated, Ham, Shem, and Japheth were all melanated or people of color. Okay. So, of course, Alexander the Great or the he-goat, when they wanted to conquer the world by bloodshed, they're the ones that intermingled their blood with the indigenous tribes or killed them off. So right here, we're in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 27. We're going to start at verse 13. This is the prophet Ezekiel during the Babylonian captivity, and it states, Javan, Tubal, and Meshi, they were thy merchants. They traded the persons of men and vessels of brass in thy markets. They of the house of Togarmah traded in their affairs with horses and horsemen and mules. Verse 15, the men of Dedan, thy were thy merchants. Many isles were the merchandise of thy hand. They brought thee for a present horns of ivory and ebony. Syria was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of the wares of thy making. They occupied in thy fairs with emeralds, purple, and embroidered work, with fine linen, and coral, and agate. Verse 17, Judah and the land of Israel, thy were thy merchants. They traded in thy markets wheat of Minnith and Peneg, and honey, and oil, and balm. Damascus was thy merchant in the multitude of the wares of thy making, for the multitude of all riches, and the wine of Helbon and white wool. Verse 19, Dan also and Javan going to and fro occupied in thy fairs. Bright iron, Kesa, and Kalmas were in thy markets. So the tribe of Dan, the Danites, were up there in the European lands or Mediterraneans in certain territories, okay? So now we're back at the Blue Letter Bible, and it states outline of biblical usage. Number 1, a Hellenist. One who imitates the manners and customs or the worship of the Greeks and the use of the Greek tongue. B, used in the New Testament of the Judeans born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. That's why Paul was going out and preaching, trying to find the scattered tribes of Israel. Okay, this was not a religion where anyone can join. It was a bloodline. So this notion that anyone can join and that this is talking about
the other nations being drafted in, that's pure nonsense. Okay. Even Christ said he was, he came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, the 10 tribes, right? The ones that were scattered, the ones that were kicked out of the land and were assimilated into other cultures or other nations. Now we're at Thayer's Greek lexicon, Strong's G1675, to copy the manners and worship of the Greeks or to use the Greek language, Weiner's Grammar 94, 89F, CF 28, a Hellenist, i.e., one who imitates the manners and customs or the worship of the Greeks and uses the Greek tongue employed in the New Testament of the Judeans born in foreign lands and speaking Greek, the Grecian Jews. So what are we in the Americas? Some would say we're speaking English, right? A foreign language, nonetheless. So the Most High told our people that if we don't obey the laws, statutes, and commandments, we will be scattered and driven among all the kingdoms of the earth. This is in the Torah, your Bible, or what Christians call, the Christian Bible these days. But it states, verse 25, the Lord Yahweh shall cause thee to be smitten before thy enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them, and shall be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. These are by Herodotus called barbarians. I repeat, these are by Herodotus called barbarians. Believe it or not, the barbarians were from the same stock as Abraham, also from the 12 tribes of Israel as well, and perhaps were derived from the Syrians and Arabians. The prosperity of Abraham by Keturah. Okay, so why did Paul say there's no difference between a Jew and a Greek, the Scythians and the barbarians, right? See Antiquity 10, see Antiquity 14:10-22, and War 1:26-1. On 1 Maccabees 12:7, we may further observe from the recognitions of Clement that Eleazar of Damascus, the servant of Abraham, Genesis 15:2 and 24, was of old by some taken for his son, so that if the Lacedaemonians, which are the Spartans, were sprung from him, they might think themselves to be the prosperity of Abraham, as well as the Jews who were sprung from Isaac. So right here we have Frank Miller, 300. Now, Frank Miller is a comic writer, but he's more famously known for the comic series The Dark Knight, which spun into the 1989 Michael Keaton's Batman movie. But when you look at the book right here, Frank Miller's 300, you're going to notice certain characteristics of the Spartans or the Lacedaemonians. So right here we have a close-up of the Spartan warrior or the Lacedaemonians. Now notice the braids or dreadlocks coming from his helmet. And of course, his helmet is called the Corinthian helmet. So we know by the scriptures, Paul travels to the city of Corinth, which is what? Modern day Greece. So right here it states the Corinthian helmet originated in ancient Greece. There's that word again, ancient. Ancient always denotes the people of color or so-called black, and took its name from the city-state of Corinth. It was a helmet made of bronze, which in its later styles covered the entire head and neck, with stilts for the eyes and mouth. A large curved projection protected the nape of the neck. So obviously Frank Miller knows about history. There's a reason why they're portrayed as indigenous or aboriginal people in the comics. And of course, this will never get the green light in mainstream. That's why they had to portray the Spartans as Caucasians. But when we read the scriptures, even from the book of Josephus, as we just read, and the book of First Maccabees, the ancient Lacedaemonians, aka Spartans, were from the stock of Abraham, meaning what? They were Israelites. Notice the Spartan or the Lacedaemonian woman. Notice her aboriginal or indigenous features. Of course, she has the nose and the full lips. Okay? Very voluptuous, which most people try to emulate in our current society.
So the letter L on the Spartans' shield stood for Lacedaemonian, which was a name of the region in ancient Greece where Sparta was located. It served as a symbol of pride and identification for the Spartans, who were known for the military prowess and discipline. So in retrospective, it's not talking about the other nations in the end time. The Most High is going to gather his elect, meaning what? The elect out of the 12 tribes of Israel. That's it. And if you're lucky to make it, 144,000. And then as far as the other nations, if they don't comply or, comply to the Most High's will, then they will be destroyed. I mean, go look at the movie Planet of the Apes. It tells you metaphorically in these movies. But a lot of times our people don't understand the Bible or don't know what it's talking about. But, the Bible, like I've stated in many of my videos about law, history, and prophecy, it's not talking about being, the New Testament is not talking about the other nations being grafted in. Okay? That's religious nonsense. The Bible's not about religion. The Bible is really about the chronicling the diary of the children of Israel. It's a bloodline. A bloodline is not a religion. Christianity, Islam, Judaism are religion. They're man-made. Okay? Jesus or Yahweh was not talking about religion. The Most High did not create religion. He created laws, statutes, and commandments. Okay? Nowhere in that Bible does it tell you you have to go to church every Sunday. But the Most High gives us laws to follow, to see us succeed. Obedience. Even though a lot of times we disobey those. So we have to, try to follow the law, statutes, commandments to the best of our ability. And repent. Every day is a new day and it's a journey. Okay? So peace.